Nestled in the heart of historic downtown Wilkesboro, the 1915 offers a wedding experience like no other. Once a federal courthouse and post office, the 1915 combines rich history with timeless charm. From intimate gatherings to full-day rentals, we provide the perfect backdrop for your most cherished moments. With indoor and outdoor options, bridal and groom suites, every detail is crafted just for you. Make your wedding unforgettable at the 1915, Wilkesboro's historic wedding venue, where your story begins.
Closed captions for this episode of Life in Wilkes is brought to you by Deal Insurance Agency in Wilkesboro, an award-winning, experienced, family-owned and operated agency with service and coverage that goes above and beyond expectations.
Join us on a captivating journey as we explore the charm, history, and vibrant culture of Wilkes County. Discover the hidden gems, inspiring stories, and remarkable people that make Wilkes a place worth knowing and celebrating. Join us now and experience the unique essence of life in Wilkes.
Good morning, Morgan Mathis. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. How are you, Carl?
Doing wonderful. Well, you and I began conversations last year, 2024, about the Hall of Fame and learning a bit about what it's all about. But with the fall schedule having all the additional things thrown at it, and we decided to move everything to the top of the year. So why don't you tell folks who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Morgan Mathis, and I am born and raised in Wilkes County. I was raised by two teachers, and so my older sister and I definitely spent a lot of time in school growing up, and so I guess you could say education has always been a part of my life, and I'm the Public Information Officer for Wilkes County Schools.
That's a big thing, you know. I mean, growing up in the education family, that's wonderful, but then to let that transfer your life into the person, the individual who's responsible for disseminating all the information about the school systems. That's pretty big.
It is, and it's a very fun job. I get to go out in schools a lot, and I get to see all of the good things that we have going on in our schools, and I get to share that information with our community. And so I consider what I do to be a very fun job.
Nice. You know, that's a good point you bring up. A fun job. And when you go out, you get to see the good stuff. I mean, we're humans, so it's not all good stuff, right? But your focus is the good stuff. Let me ask you a question. I have an opinion on this, and I'll share after I hear your thoughts. But when you say you focus on the good stuff, I tend to think that might be easier because there's more good stuff than not good stuff, right?
Definitely.
Talk about that.
I consider almost what I do as storytelling because a lot of the community doesn't get to come inside of our schools on a daily basis. And so they don't get to see the things that a lot of our staff get to see on a daily basis. And so I try to think in that mindset and think when I go into a school, this would be really great for our community to see because they may not know that this classroom is doing this or this entire school is working on this. And so that's what I try to think of when I go into a school to take videos or to take pictures. I try to share the things that I think are really important for our community to see.
Is it hard to find the good stuff?
No, not at all. It's funny because I like to tell folks, if you're having a bad day, go spend time in a kindergarten classroom or go spend time in a pre-K classroom because you see the excitement. And it's an excitement every grade level, but that grade level is probably my personal favorite. And you can just see it's their first year of school. They're so excited to be there, and the environment is just so positive and full of energy.
So do you think so would it be good medicine for when we are older in other classes where you're in elementary school and you get to high school and you've got those bad moments? Would it be therapeutic to just sit down and be quiet for a moment and remember those early days?
Most definitely.
Is it that simple?
I also, something that I do in my job is I serve as the youth leadership advisor for our youth leadership and philanthropy programs. And so I see junior in high school and seniors in high school. And something that they always talk about are their favorite times in elementary school. And so I think that when they look back at those years, it is sort of therapeutic to them to remember those earlier years and how exciting it was for them.
All right. So back to my thoughts. I believe there's always more good than bad. And I've had people say, well, you're just optimistic and you're always talking happy stuff. There's bad stuff to us. Sure, but it's a very small percentage. Mm-hmm. And there are other people that talk about that. So sometimes I think that we allow the bad, the negative, the unfortunate moments to expand so much that it paints a picture that everything is that way. It's almost like it splatters. If you're a sloppy painter, and you don't stay in the lines, and you got paint on the window and on the floor, and you got another painter, and they're all neat, and they just can cut a line perfectly. So I guess they're different painters, aren't there?
Mm-hmm. And I truly believe the more good you put out, it drowns out the bad.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen the benefit of that?
I have.
Tell us about one.
Something that I'm very passionate about are our social media pages. Mm-hmm. And I try to be creative and not just posting some of the same things over and over. There are things that people may not want to see all the time. And so I try to do videos here and there so that people can really see students interacting and completing projects together, maybe communicating with each other. I think sometimes our youth today can get a bad rap that they're all about their phones. Right. They don't talk, they don't communicate. And so in the back of my mind, that's what I'm always trying to think is I see on a day-to-day, if I'm in a school, how students are with each other and how impressive they are. And I try to almost combat that initial thought of our youth today.
I think that pause that you had there, I know that was not dramatic effect you were processing, because it is that thing that it does take a moment. And I think what just happened is that idea that taking a moment, gather our thoughts, thinking about what's good about this? Where do we go with it? And just taking a moment to do that, I think that might save a lot of arguments and world wars.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it is an opportunity we have in life to celebrate the good. So when you look at the school systems now, I'm talking about how kids might sometimes get a bad rap because they're on their phone so much or whatever. Throughout society, if we go back and look at over the past couple of 100 years of education, there have always been a few conflicts between the younger and the older, right? Well, they're just not this or that, or they are this or that. I mean, isn't that true?
Definitely.
There were other distractions before the iPhones.
Yes.
The iPhone has become a distraction, but it's also a tool.
Right.
So it's one of those complicated things. So I don't know if you can tell kids, well, you just have to put those away now because now you're using them as computers.
Right.
Right? So that does take us into a different world. Mm-hmm. Where do you see the future as far as our evolution? You're young enough, you're in the school system now, you're with young minds. The people you're with are tomorrow's, period. This is where we're going. Mm-hmm. These are the people that will lead the way, right? Mm-hmm. So what's your quick overview of where you think that we are from our education society now?
I see a lot in our youth. They're very quick thinkers. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important because they can think quick on their feet. They're creative and they're not afraid to tell you how they feel. And they are a very caring generation as well. They are always worried about their peers. They're always worried about how they can help someone else. And I think today adults would not think that about our youth, but I've seen that.
So when you say worried, is it fair to say concerned? I mean, because worrying might mean something different to some people, but it is an emotional reaction to what they see their friends going through, right?
They pay attention and they notice if someone in their grade level even is having a bad day. They notice that at school and they get worried about that student and they start asking questions and how they can help them.
Meg, you do understand that what you're saying is in conflict with what some people would say now about kids, that they don't care, they're disconnected. You're saying something entirely different. What do you say to those people who are like, hey, no, there's, they're lost, they're too tied up in technology, they're disconnected? You say,
I would say spend time with them, really get to know them.
So just like it always has been. Yeah. So as much as things change, it sounds like it stays the same too. Yeah. Let's talk about the Hall of Fame. So we've got kids that'll be future recipients one day for the Hall of Fame, right? Down the road.
Yes.
Because that tends to be the people who are in the Hall of Fame now, people who have lived a life and served and who have done good. They're the doers, right?
Yes.
Let's talk about the Wilkes Hall of Fame, your responsibility there, and how did it come about?
So the Wilkes County Hall of Fame was created in 2013, and it's really a neat story. There, for Wilkes County Schools in 2013, we had two people. One of those was Dennis Huggins, and his role at the time was Director of Development, and someone else named Dr. Marty Hemrick, who was our superintendent. And they were having a conversation about the great people in Wilkes, and they were trying to figure out a way to recognize these people so that other people may be inspired or encouraged just by hearing their stories of what all they've accomplished in their life. And so they invited the right people to come to the table, and they laid out the groundwork for what would become the Wilkes County Hall of Fame. And early on in those years that I think has been really, really important, one of the original board members had a conversation and said that they were very adamant that it did not need to be a sports Wilkes County Hall of Fame. They wanted it to be comprehensive. And I think that has been really important since day one, because that has really made it available to so many more people to be able to have their stories told. And so laying the groundwork, they established the Wilkes County Hall of Fame as a nonprofit organization, and we have installed 89 inductees as of today. So just short of 100 inductees.
Wow. So these are people that have been, someone submitted their name. Talk about that process. In other words, how is from someone being nominated to chosen, what is that journey like?
Sure. In order for someone to be considered, they do have to be nominated. And that is a challenge I feel like over time we have kind of gotten to, because I think a lot of the public thinks that the Hall of Fame board just selects folks. And that's actually not the case. We do ask for nominations for every person in order to be considered. And so we have a nomination form that can be filled out. We have one that's actually built into our Wilkes County Hall of Fame website. We have a paper form that stays at our office at the Wilkes County Board of Education that can be picked up for folks that may not want to complete it on a computer necessarily. And then we have just another electronic form that folks can access through our website as well.
When is that? How is the submission process? Is there a time period, or is it open all the time?
There is. So we have a deadline every year. It started in January of every year we would have that deadline, and we figured out that was pretty close to our induction gala. So in order to give us a little bit more time, and as we've gotten more and more nominations, we've actually backed that up a little bit in the last 3 years. So our deadline every year is the end of November, the last day of November.
Okay.
To be considered for that next class.
Sure.
However, anything after November that year, we still accept them and we'll review them for the next class.
Right. So it'll just roll over into the next time period. So no matter when you submit, your submission will be considered at the appropriate time, depending on what slot that it lands in.
And once a person is nominated, they stay nominated. We continue to review those nominations every single year, and at this point, we have about 80 nominees.
So if someone's nominated, they've done some good stuff in their life.
Definitely.
Right. So it's just a matter of your turn coming up.
Yes.
Often is the case, right?
And a lot of it depends on that nomination form and how well it's completed, because a lot of folks don't realize our board is very diverse. And so even though Wilkes County seems like a small town sometimes, we may not know everyone.
Right.
And so a lot of times it just depends on how well that nomination is completed. And there are also other things that can be added to a nomination form that can help us understand a little bit more about that individual. That can be letters of recommendation that may tell a little bit more about that individual's character.
Sure.
Might be able to tell some stories specifically that writer may know about that nominee, articles from newspapers, anything that really outlines stories and specific things that individual did.
So you're building a packet when you're doing your submission. You're providing as much information from all sources that you might know as an individual about that person or what you've read. So if you're nominating them, they're either a relative or there's somebody that has had an influence on your life, right? Isn't that typically the way it works?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so the more you can include in your nomination packet, the better your chances are.
Yes.
Okay, because over time, with almost 100 people, that's a lot of good people that have been celebrated. So bringing on new people, I guess you do have to dig a little deeper. And then also dealing with that issue of thinking if there was that information or thought process in a community that they're just being selected by a group and I don't have, how could I possibly help? Now you're saying, you're putting that word out, hey, look, we've always been a nomination process, and now it's time to get back involved. Are there still enough good people to continue to get new nominations every year?
Oh, yes. And something that our board really would like to see are more of those older pioneers of Wilkes County that, may have been passed for quite some time. And a lot of family members may not still be with us to be able to complete nominations on them that may have knew more about that person. And we would really like to see more of those older nominees.
Why is that important?
They helped build Wilkes County.
So the history.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you a big fan of history?
I am. I am.
It makes a difference when we take a moment and look at history and reflect and see the hard work, and it's more than just hard work though. It was smart work too. Right? So when you get nominations, you're getting nominations for not only people that worked hard, but who were smart and they worked with purpose and probably helped a lot of people along the way. Is that part of it?
Yes.
What do you see as the future? Because you're younger, and as you look at your process now, and what your responsibilities are to help promote the Hall of Fame and get the word out. We need more people to be nominated. Please help. So what do you see the future? So if we're sitting here, we're sitting here in 2025, the beginning of the year, and 10 years from now, let's say we'll talk plenty between now and then, but 10 years from now, do you see the value of the Hall of Fame being just as legitimate or maybe even more so than now?
I definitely see it being as legitimate as it's now, and I see it growing. Something that we have been really proud of that we have added since 2018 is a youth leadership breakfast.
Oh, that's
and
great.
we have recently renamed it the James Cook Leadership Breakfast in James Cook's memory.
Okay.
He was part of the original board when it was created, and they had one youth leadership breakfast before he unexpectedly passed, and he was so supportive of that event. And something that he told our entire board after that event was he felt that was the best thing the Wilkes County Hall of Fame had ever done.
Really?
And he had a really big passion for helping youth. And he really believed in youth in our county, and so that event has really grown as well. And something that event does is it bridges our Hall of Fame inductees and our students. And that's middle school and high school students that attend that event. And we have taken away so much from that event. And I know our students have as well. And I think
give
that's
us some examples of that.
Sure. So the Hall of Fame, the James Cook Leadership Breakfast, What that consists of is we invite all of our Hall of Fame inductees to come and participate, and they have roundtable discussions with middle and high school students. We mix everybody up, so it's not friends sitting with friends.
Right.
We try to make them a little uncomfortable at first, and they get to have one-on-one conversations with these inductees. And it's funny because we have sent out a survey year after year for them to fill out to say, tell us what you thought, what would you change, what were some things you really liked, and something that was common for the last few years was we want to meet more. We want to talk to more inductees. And
so this survey went out to the students?
Yes.
Okay. All
yes.
right.
And so when we saw that, we were like, wow, that's great. We're going to do it. That's what they want. We're going to do it. And so it started off back in 2018, I believe, with them talking with one inductee. And so it has now grown. And unfortunately, we don't have an entire day to spend with them. It usually lasts from about 9 o'clock until 11.
Okay.
And so we only have a small period of time, but we've made it to where they get to speak with 4 to 5 inductees while they're there. And they all have different stories. They all have different successes, and students have loved that. And then at the very end of the event, we invite the students to come on stage and tell what they've learned. What are some takeaways from the event? And that's where the magic happens. When students start saying, I learned that I need to be a better communicator. Or a student says, well, I learned that I need to be a critical thinker in order to be a leader. That's when you know they've learned something. They've taken away a lot. And our inductees alike even enjoy it as well. So that's really been a very rewarding event.
Isn't it interesting how your inductees, who have clearly, because they're inductees and your recipients especially, these are people who have lived and are still living, most of the time, right? You have some posthumously honored people, but for those alive and those who are still involved, there's never a point in their life that interaction with eager minds, regardless of the age, doesn't stimulate them, right? Doesn't excite them and give them, I guess, more excitement and energy about the community. And so the students, I mean, we're all energy, right? We're all kind of, that goes back and forth. So is that really what you're seeing? I mean, are you saying these are magical moments that if you could bottle this energy, this excitement, it would be really good?
Definitely. And I believe it was 2 years ago, Zach Galifianakis was invited to join, and he really wanted to, but he was traveling at the time, and I believe he was in California filming for something, and he said, I would love to participate. Can I just Zoom in? And so we had him call in through Zoom, and he spoke to the entire room, and we felt like his words were so powerful because he said, stay off social media. And when you look around the room, the kids are kind of like, what? And he said, in my opinion, stay off social media. Pause, take a moment, and take in the world around you and read. Right. He said, read, read, read. And so that's the type of advice that they're getting from these inductees. And inductees even get asked by these students, well, if you were in middle school today, what would you change? What would you do differently? And that's really powerful for those students to hear those words, because it can kind of make them take a couple of steps back and say, well, maybe I should be doing this.
Are you seeing more evolution of youth organizations in Wilkes County? I know there's one person that we've had on the show with the Wild group, right?
It's a great group.
And they have, during the end of last year, last quarter, when things were going on, that required a lot of assistance from the Carolinas and literally the nation for recovery efforts. I wasn't surprised to see his group out there doing things, and then they sat in the chair you're sitting in now and shared those stories. Is that important that Luke does what he does, and that organization is there, and other youth groups outside of school that work with school but outside that? Talk about why you think that's important.
I think it's important to see other youth seeing them making a difference, because that's going to light the fire under them to say, well, I want to be a part of that. I think that's important. I see how many youth are in that group, and they're doing this. I want to do that. And I think that just them seeing the difference that they're making is a great thing.
Does it inspire you?
It does. It does. The youth leadership and youth philanthropy groups that I help lead in our school district, I get to see a lot of that with them. And we only meet monthly, so I wish we could meet more. But I see a lot through them, and they're the ones wanting to make a difference as well. That is really their main goal, is how can we make Wilkes County better? And what better way than asking the youth of today, because they see more things than we see at times.
Are you seeing that this energy, this excitement is being supported through, the schools or the community at large? Are there people that are like, okay, we hear you. What can we do? We want to help you, or we're there for you. Do you see that collaboration going on?
Definitely. Especially in our middle and high schools.
Of course.
I think the leadership roles are being taken very seriously by students now, and they see the need in being that person that other students look up to.
Are you involved at all with the transitional period of people, students, and encouraging the work that happens between the Wilkes education system and the Wilkes Community College or other higher learning institutions? Is that something that from your standpoint, that the school district helps promote that and support that ideology that, hey, education is a continuing, lifelong process?
I see a lot of it when I'm out in our schools, and a lot of that is thanks to the amazing staff that we have. They are very open about sharing every opportunity that our students have, and a lot of that is through our CTE courses, our career and technical education courses. Students can take a variety of courses just to try it and see if they like it before they get to that next step after high school, to make sure, hey, I actually do like this, or no, I do not like this. I'm not going into this kind of a field. And so that's really important for students to be able to try out those classes before they get to that next step. And it's a little late in the game for them to start finding out, and could be expensive for them to find out if they don't like something.
That's a smart thing to do. I mean, the idea that you can learn to do anything, I don't know if that's, well, maybe you can learn how to do a little bit of it, but for it to be your passion, I don't know how easy that would be. So this is a practical way of saying, hey, this is what this career is like. Does that excite you or not?
Yeah.
And it's never a problem, is it, when someone is not excited by a certain thing? Maybe they want to do well, and it's like, oh no, I can't. That's I'm going to have a lot of therapy before I can deal with those sparks, or whatever the situation is. Finding that out early and moving on. How high on the scale of important things to discover in life would you place that opportunity of figuring out what you might or might not like? How important is that?
Oh, it's very important. And our students in middle school are really starting to make that decision that early on.
Okay. All right. Here's another one. Critical thinking. That's being talked about a lot, to have that analytical mind, how to be creative. That's not a new concept at all, but it seems to be more in demand now because of advanced technologies or what have you. But even farmers have to have critical thinking. They have a lot of things they have to maneuver and work their way around. Are you seeing that the right things are being done to support those initiatives within the educational system?
Oh, yes. And a lot of our staff are really trying to get our students to think on their own and say, well,
Independent thinking.
Yes. And that's important.
So that helps in preparing people for the evolution of how work is being done, or a hybrid of how work is done. Because not only might you go to an office, but you might have to work remotely, just because that's maybe the job requirement. So being able to have that capacity, learning how to do that when you're younger, that makes that process easier, right? Your overall look at our education system in Wilkes County and the Carolinas, I mean, where do you see from your seat and what you're doing? And I think from what you described about your involvement, it's so intimate. You are there. You are seeing people, talking to people, documenting their journey. That's important. So talk for a moment about where you see it now and what you think, based upon what you're seeing now, what the logical future holds for the education system in Wilkes.
I think our county should be so proud of the things that our school system is doing and the things that our students are doing. We have the highest graduation rate this past year that we've had in over 10 years.
Wow.
In a decade. And so I think that's really great to look back and see. I mean, our students are working so hard, and we've had so many staff recognized regionally and even by the state for great things that we have going on. We have a state principal of the year, and we just have so many great things going on in our schools, and it just continues to get better. And I think our county would be so proud of that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wow, what a great first visit. I mean, I feel like we've touched on the foundation of what you do. We've had some broader thoughts that we've shared there as well. Do you feel good about it?
Yeah.
Why don't we look at our future gatherings to kind of hone in on some of those individual areas? Why don't we take a show and we'll talk about those teachers that are recognized, the principals that are recognized. So will the entire show just be about them?
Sure.
And then you'll pick the different categories. I'll let you work on that list. And then let's say every quarter we can get together and catch up and talk about those things and help shine a bit of light on what's really happening. And I like to say, well, let's look at the positive side. But I think if we just look at it, there's so much positive that outweighs our problems. That helps us frame our thoughts and our attitudes, doesn't it?
The more good you put out,
the better.
Yes.
Well, that's great. Well, thanks for all your great work. I mean, it's fantastic. I really enjoyed our first conversation and taking a deep dive into how the Hall of Fame works and seeing those names and recognizing those names, having talked to some of those people, say, yeah, they really deserve being there. And I agree. There's probably a lot more that should be there,
Oh,
too.
yes. There's lots of folks out there, and I truly believe that there's a lot of folks out there that do so many things behind the scenes that other people may not have a clue that they're even doing.
Right. Or that's being done by anybody.
Right.
Yeah. It takes people doing things, right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending time with us on Life in Wilkes. We value you as a viewer and appreciate when you share this show with your friends and family. Be sure to bookmark our channel and join us again on the next episode of Life in Wilkes.